Jack Weiner, his brother Jim Weiner, Charlie Foltz, and Chuck Rock. Please welcome them all. The story, which is in 2 books, one is called Secret Life, First-Hand Documented Accounts of UFO Abductions, and the other is called The Allagash Abductions, both fascinating. Did any of you believe in UFOs before you started out at that time? Metza. What about you, Jim?
We believed in them.
You believed in them?
Yeah, I always believed that we can't possibly be the only planet in the universe that has intelligent life on it.
Okay. And, go on.
Open-minded.
Open-minded. But did you ever sit around and say, I really believe this, so you just kind of let it go?
Yeah.
All right. Now, you all met where? College?
Yes, Art College, Massachusetts College of Art in Boston.
Okay. And all decided to go for a good week, and what happened?
Well, we started out on the trip. It was a normal camping trip. Landed. We had to fly in. It was a very remote area. We flew into the lake.
Northern Maine.
Oh, yes. Way up there.
Okay.
Way up there. Almost in Canada.
Almost in Canada.
Okay.
Now, something happened the first night.
Second night of the trip.
Second night.
Yes, we're all camped on a beach on Chamberlain Lake with a few other campers. There might have been a dozen or 14 other campers there. And we saw a very bright light in the sky that had a reddish cast to it to the east, and we thought it might have been Mars.
Right.
It was so bright, we didn't know what to make of it. But then it just did something strange. It collapsed on itself. It became inverted and closed in like an eyelid coming over an eye.
Right.
And then it disappeared.
Okay. Then everything is fine, and then what happened 2 days later, or 2 nights later?
Well, 2 nights later, we were at a different campsite on a different lake. It's called Eagle Lake.
Okay.
And we decided that we would go out and do some night fishing. So all 4 of us climbed into a single canoe with our fishing gear.
After laying a big fire so that we knew how to get back. There was no moon that night, and we had to lay a big fire that would last for about 3 hours. And Jack you were quite concerned that it was going to burn the whole forest down.
That's right. I remember I kept complaining that we had almost made the fire too big.
Okay, so you could find your way back.
Right.
You all get in the canoe.
And we all get in the canoe and we go out to go fishing.
How far out did you go?
Well, we were about 2/3 of the way across a narrow inlet where we were camping. Was approximately 300 or so yards wide. And we were about 100 yards from the far shore from our campsite when...
what happened?
Well, we were out just, trying to catch a few fish, and a little while later we found out we were catch of the day.
How? What physically happened?
Well...
What did you see? What came down?
It started because we were getting bit up by mosquitoes, and we started towards our campfire. And I was in the back of the canoe, and I noticed it first. I felt like someone was staring at me on a subway. That's the feeling I had. I turned around to look over my right shoulder, and there was a ball of light.
Now, you've been sketching all of this.
Yes, and this is just a few minutes sketch, but it was above the lake shore, above the water, and it had a sort of an energy pathway around the polar and equatorial sides of the thing, dividing it into 4 oscillating quadrants of colored light. And it looked very liquid in appearance, and the color changes went from red to green to bright yellow-white.
Right.
And they seem to follow this gyroscopic pattern.
Okay, let me ask you, I don't know why I'm asking you, Jim. Don't take this personally. You're on drugs?
No.
Were you drinking, 4 guys?
Absolutely not.
Students out having a good time? Couple of beers?
No, it's not allowed
What
on
a
the
boring
Allagash.
canoe trip.
Well,
No.
not really. It's simply not allowed. And when you check in to the lake system, there's a ranger that comes and you have to register, and they check you, they ask you, and they give you a good look over. And if they do find alcohol or drugs, you're out without a refund.
Absolutely sober. Okay. Now you see this ball of light. What came next?
Well, we were watching it. It had no sound. We were downwind from it. No noise whatsoever. No whirring, no humming, no purring, no sound of wind. Absolutely nothing. And it was huge. It was as big as a 2-story building. Perfectly spherical.
Did you talk to each other? Did you say, oh, my God?
Yeah, we were like,
what's that?
holy mackerel, what is this? And we knew that it was what we had seen 2 days before. It was the same quality of light. So at first we thought, well, geez, is it a weather balloon? No, it doesn't look like a weather balloon. It's too big. we thought, well, it can't be a helicopter. There's no noise.
Right.
So, I mean, we were like, geez, that's got to be a UFO. What else could it possibly be?
Were you frightened? I mean, I would be in that water and swimming ashore like Esther Williams.
It was a
I
we had mixed feelings. I mean,
Yeah.
you're literally awed by this sight
Yeah.
because while you're looking at this, you're thinking, you're going through all this thing. What is this? It's not this. It's not that. Sooner or later, you come to the conclusion, well, it's got to be a UFO. That part of it is, it leaves you awestruck. I mean, absolutely
But not
awestruck.
frightened?
Well, you get a little frightened too. At least we got a little
Yeah.
frightened. Now, Charlie or Chuck, he remained a little calmer. He seemed to be a little more calm with it all. So the feelings are mixed.
You signaled.
Yeah, I
right?
took
You
a
took a
flashlight and flashed at it. It
What-
remained stationary after we first saw it appear above the treetops, and we just sat looking at it, going, whoa, look at that. Then it started moving as we were viewing it to our right, and when it had moved a few yards, I picked the flashlight up and flashed at it, at which point it had a large light immediately hit the water surface, and both it and the light started approaching us.
Now, then what happened?
This is the
Listen,
light.
the light, can we get a picture of that? The light came down out of it when you flashed it. Right, all right, and approached the boat.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened?
We decided we could see it just as good from shore as we could from
So
where
you
we
started
were.
to get to shore.
Right.
And did it follow you? Or
Yes. Oh, yes. It came right up behind us.
did it envelop you?
Well, the light was on the water behind the canoe, and I remember paddling out the side of the canoe with my hand because at this point we just wanted to get away from
Yes,
it.
yes.
And suddenly I was looking over my shoulder while I was paddling, and it was getting very, very close, and it seemed to be closer than it should be. Like at
Right.
one point it was way back there, and all of a sudden it was right behind us.
Right.
And the beam of light was coming right up to the back of the canoe. And at that moment, I knew in my mind that we weren't going to out-paddle this light, that this was it. They were going to get us.
Right. Then what happened? Do you remember at that point?
We have a period of time where we are very confused or can't remember how we got to shore and how we got to camp.
So the next thing you all logically remembered was
Being on the beach.
Being on the beach.
Watching it. We got to the beach, we got out of the canoe, we turned around, it was right in front of us. And we watched it for a few moments, and then it appeared to implode, blink out on itself. It was a very strange way of doing it. It was almost like the light goes like that. And it was, at first we thought it vanished. Then we saw it moving up through the sky. And the beam was still going up into the sky, and it was kind of like eclipsing, almost as if the light was going through it in, like when the moon
Right.
eclipses in
Right.
phases.
Right.
That's the appearance it was. And within seconds, this thing had gone up and became a star. It moved around to the southwest on the horizon and then just disappeared out of sight.
Now, what about the fire? You left, a few
we
minutes
had,
ago you thought
yeah,
a
maybe about
raging
20,
fire.
Yeah, about 20 minutes ago we figured we had gone out under the water, and when we walked back to the campsite saying, wow, it was incredible. What do you think about it? And got up to the campfire and said, geez, the fire's out. Do you think we should, build it up again? Everybody said, no, leave it out. So we pretty much all crashed and turned in for the night
But
about
you
that
had built
time.
a fire that should have lasted 3 hours,
3 hours,
4
yeah.
hours.
4 or 5 hours even. We had huge logs on this fire. 10-inch diameter.
Yeah.
That
it
should
was-
have burned a long
so
time.
Obviously, but did you say to each other, if the fire's out, that means time? Time
we
is
were.
gone.
It was very strange, Joan, because we were all. We just had this feeling of being tired, and we wanted to go to bed.
I liken it to having a local anesthetic. If you have an injury to your finger, the doctor will freeze your limb, and you'll become very relaxed and unconcerned.
Right.
And that's the feeling we had, very unconcerned.
Did you tell anybody? Did you talk about this among yourselves and tell everybody? Go
Well-
back and say, you're not going to believe what happened last night. This light was coming after me, and I was crazed.
Well, the next day, we talked about it a little, which was unusual because you'd think that something like that, that's all we would talk about. But we didn't talk about it much. We were still kind of in shock from it all.
Right.
And by the end of the next day, we were kind of coming out of the shock, and we started to talk among ourselves a little bit more. And when we got to our next campsite, we signaled a ranger who was crossing the lake on a boat to come over. And when the ranger came over, we told him about the sighting.
And what did he say? Yeah. He said, "Are you on drugs? Are you drinking?" He said what I said, right?
Did you get your ray gun out, fellas?
Yeah.
Thick Maine accent. He says, you know, they had this opening for a hardware store down Millinocket, and they brought a couple of searchlights, and they crisscrossed them in the sky out of the back of a pickup truck, and that's probably what you guys saw.
So that's kind of, now, when we
90
come
miles away was Millinocket.
and he thought that's what it was two lights crossing 90
That's what he
miles
told
away.
us.
You know, John, you know, like a lot of times you can tell by a person's facial expressions and their eyes when they're lying. And we knew he was lying. I knew he was lying. I could tell by his eyes
Right away.
that
Okay.
he knew what we were talking about, and he was trying to play it down.
Okay, we're going to go to commercial. When we come back, we're going to talk about what happened and how you all really found out what happened years and years later. And we will be back, because 12 years later, they found out that they really were abducted by aliens. Fascinating story. So, we are back, and we are talking with four men who underwent a mysterious alien abduction when they were still going to school, and now, 12 years later, are talking about it. What happened? It started in 1988. This happened in 1976, right? And then you all went back, you went to school, you got married, you had lives.
Right.
What happened in 1988 that kicked off this whole thing?
What started it all was I was being treated at a local hospital in my town for an epilepsy, a seizure disorder that I had gotten from a head injury.
Right.
I had a very bad accident.
Right.
And I was being treated for that. And one of the type of epilepsy I have is temporal lobe limbic.
Which means?
Temporal limbic epilepsy. It affects, oh gosh, all kinds of things. A lot of parasympathetic functions, breathing, heart rate, temperature control. It affects my olfactory sense. So I smell things. I have time displacements where I get confused about what's happening in the immediate time. Lots and lots of things.
Right. And this came from an accident?
This came from an accident that occurred in 1978.
Okay.
And so I was being treated for this. And at that time, I was having these bedroom experiences where I would wake up at night and there was something in my bedroom that was trying to pull my covers off the bed. I could feel them trying to pull me out of bed. I would be either totally or partially paralyzed. I would hear a voice next to my ear that sounded like something was trying to talk to me, but I could never understand what it was. Would you like to hear what?
Yes.
I know.
Yes.
This is exactly what it sounded like. It was like, and it was a kind of thing where you think if I just got a little closer, I could get it,
right.
But you never do. But you can't move. You feel terrified. You know there's something in your room. They're doing something to you, and you can't. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And you swear you're awake. I mean, it's one thing if you wake up and say, "Oh, what a terrible nightmare I've just had."
Right.
But when you absolutely believe that you're awake during this kind of event, it really does some serious things to your mind.
Right.
And so I got in the habit where I was afraid, literally afraid to go to sleep at night. I was going around the house, locking the windows. I was literally padlocking myself into my bedroom because I thought whatever it was, I could keep it out.
You were married this time?
No, I wasn't married at this time. I was single. And I was living with other roommates at the time. In fact, Charles was one of them. Charlie was one of the roommates. I was living with Charlie and 3 other roommates in an apartment. And, of course, they noticed I was being a little strange.
Yeah.
And, of course, I wasn't sleeping. My seizure activity started going up. The doctors at the hospital started asking me questions about it. Well, at first, I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't want them to think I was crazy.
Right.
Well, eventually they said, well, Jim, if you don't talk to us about it, we're going to drop you as a patient. We know there's something wrong. We can see you're not sleeping. Your seizure activity is going up. Either you talk to us or you're out of here.
Right.
So, I mean, they bent my arm, and I had to tell them. But when I told them, they were, holy mackerel, what do we do now? I mean,
The guy's a nutcase.
The guy's a nutcase, or if he isn't, we don't know how to deal with him.
Right.
So, but actually, the psychiatrist that I was seeing who specialized in the temporal limbic epilepsy he was a really, really good person. Not just a good psychiatrist, but a very good person. And he said, look, Jim, I'll see what I can do. Maybe I can find someone somewhere who deals with people like you. And I said, okay, I would really appreciate that. And about a week later, he called me on the phone and he said, well, you know, Jim, there's a UFO convention being held at a neighboring town, and Ray Fowler is going to be there. And at that time, I believe Ray Fowler was the head of Northeast Investigations for MUFON. So he said, why don't you go talk to this guy? I'm sure he'll know who you can be referred to for help.
Right.
You know, you obviously need it.
Right.
So I did. That's how I ran into Ray Fowler. I went to this convention, and I talked to Ray. I told him the story. And he was there, I think he was lecturing or selling one of his previous books,
Right.
because he has a few out.
And he said to you to what? To have hypnosis?
That's exactly what he said. The thing that tipped him off was this twin business. You know, I mean,
What?
we told him the story, and I said, well, my identical twin and two other friends. He goes, wait, did you say identical twin?
Yeah.
And I said, yes. He said, come here. He took me in a side room and made me tell him everything. And
Why
then,
identical twins?
well, I think this is one of the few cases that involves identical twins. It's also one of the few cases that involves a multiple abduction.
Now, when they hypnotized you, you remembered?
We remembered being on board this ship with
They
these
say
beings
we.
around us, all of us.
So they decided to take all of you and hypnotize all of you?
Yes. Right.
And you all remember the same things?
Yes.
Now, we have a tape. Who is a tape of? We have an audio tape. The tape is of you, Jim. This is one of the audio tapes of you being
Right.
hypnotized.
We've never heard the tape, so this is going to be interesting.
And this is a tape of you under hypnosis describing the beginning part of going on the ship. Okay, can we hear the tape?
No doubt it was a tube. Some kind of weird tube light. I don't like that feeling. It's like time stopped or something. That's what was scary. That feeling of not perceiving time. The tube is going up there, I can tell. It's pretty obvious to me that if we could look up that tube, whoever was at the other end could look down. And I was just terrified about whatever it was that was in the other end of that tube. What did it want with us?
Oh, that's heavy. Now, you all began to go through this in hypnosis, okay. What did the tube, you all went up the tube. This was found out by each one of you, independently, separately, they hypnotized and told the kind of same thing.
That's right.
All right, now that was the start of the tube. You were taken up the tube. What did you all find out happened during hypnosis?
Well, the next thing I remembered after going up the tube was I was aware that I was lying on my back.
Lying on your back.
Flat on my back, and the first thing I noticed were my bare feet. And then I noticed that I was naked, and I was wondering, you know, how did I get naked and where am I? And it was in a very bright room without any details. I couldn't see anything really, and all I could move were my eyes. I couldn't move any of my limbs.
Tied down or just...
No, I wasn't tied down. I was just laying flat on my back, unable to move.
The way you feel sometimes in your dreams.
Right.
Okay.
And when I started moving my eyes around, and when I looked to my left, I noticed that these three guys were sitting on a bench of some kind. It wasn't like a normal chair. It was just some kind of slab that came out of this haze, and they were all just sitting there looking unconcerned, completely naked.
Also naked.
Also naked.
Do you remember that?
I remember certain things more clearly than others. And I remember the inability to see very far. I remember some figures. I remember glimpses of my friends. And I remember in one instance I was able to see one of the twins, the back of their head, the back of their shoulders, and the upper part of their back as it was they were turned to me. And there were figures bending over one of the twins and inscribing a line around the shoulder and underneath the shoulder blade, and then inserting some sort of probe.
So they were doing medical experiments. Let's go for a quick commercial, and then Can you remember the medical experiments now?
Oh, yeah,
I see a lot of head shaking, yes. Okay.
We'd rather forget them.
Okay, all right, then let's forget them, but after the show, because it's sweet. So let's remember them one more time this week, and then you guys can wash them from your memory. And we'll be right back with more in a moment, so stay tuned, please. 4 men about their mysterious alien abduction. Medical experiments. Each one of you, they did something to, with probes, and they took things. And what do they do? Can you, this time, let's go right down the line. Let's start with you, Chuck. Do you remember what they did to you?
I remember they were doing something to my penis with some sort of a device.
Did it hurt?
No, I don't think it. I just felt wet down there, like
Okay.
they had taken semen.
Taken semen. Did they talk to you while this was happening?
No.
No. Okay.
It was like being in a dance. I was just following through.
Right.
Sort of like being on this show, having the people guide us to the stage, and
Right.
we were
Right.
just going along with things.
All right. What about you, Charlie?
I was like totally unwilling to want to be having things done to me that
Were you
I was
struggling
just
with them?
feeling violated. I remember being extremely upset and wanting to be other places. In my canoe where I belonged and
Right.
not where I was. And I had this face while I was trying to do something. This face came down leaned down and looked right in my eyes, and it was just like went back. It's like you can't get away far enough because you're already laying on your back. There's like nowhere to go.
Right.
And these huge black eyes just looked right into mine. And I don't know if you've ever been in an elevator that suddenly drops a little bit and your stomach goes. Well, I felt like my mind, my thinking conscious mind just go right into these eyes. And I was told, relax,
How
don't
told?
move, you're not in any danger. Well, I don't know. There was like no
Telepathy?
words
Yeah,
moved, no lips moved. It
Yeah.
was just like all of a sudden my thoughts were filled with this message, and it was like almost like a sort of like a command, and yet almost sort of like matter of fact, very matter of fact. Like a physician says, this needle's not going to hurt. You're going to feel a little stab or a
Right.
little, you know.
What did they do to you?
Well, as Jack said, the first thing I remembered under hypnosis was looking at my feet and my toes and thinking, where are my shoes?
Right.
And they're like, hey, you know, it's like my legs. And then I noticed like my chest, and they're like, then I started getting very anxious about being disclothed. And then there was this like panel that had a similar color to the top of the table, sort of a bluish
Right.
glow to it above my chest. I could only like see the bottom part, which was very flat and emanating this blue light, sort of like a neon
I
blue.
remember this happening to Charlie. I saw this scene that
You
he's
saw
talking
this
about.
happening to him.
And the thing over his chest looked something like the Sydney Opera House in Australia.
Oh, yes.
It seemed to have a fluted design, and it was causing Charlie a lot of discomfort.
So what
remember-
caused him to come?
It was the most frightening part of the event for me.
What about the two of you? You actually have scars you found. Can you show on camera? that They obviously took some. They took
Jack,
a
show
flesh
me
from you, or
show Joan your scars.
oh my, yeah, big scar, and you never had that before.
No.
All right, and so they must have taken scrapings from you.
Well, what happened was this is the result of a lump that grew there that was removed.
And sent to the.
And it was sent to the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology, which was not where they told me it was sent. See, they told me it was sent to the
National Health
the National Health Institute in Georgia.
But they said this.
And years later, I found out that they actually sent it to the Air Force Institute of Pathology for study.
Wow. And what about you? You have scars?
Well, no. What I have on my legs are patches. When I was on the examination table, I remember them taking these almost flat, roundish objects, and they put them on the bottom of my ankle. So ever since then, I have patches where no hair will grow on both
And
legs.
before that, hair grew there.
Yeah.
Okay, lastly,
fine.
before we go to commercial, then we'll be back with a lot more of this. How did you all get off the ship? Do you remember getting off?
I remember after the medical procedures and after watching Charlie and Chuck being marched back and forth down this hallway to wherever they were taking us to do these procedures, they came and they gathered us all four together. And
Were you
they,
happy to see each other? You were just in a state of shock?
well, no, I felt actually happy. I was happy to see everyone because at least I knew that we were all alive then.
Right.
And so that made me happy we were all still alive.
Right.
And so I remember being marched down this hallway of some type. It was very difficult to, there were no details. And they, there was some, our clothing was there in a heap. And we got our clothing and we were helping each other into our clothing. And it was kind of like we were doing this in our sleep or in a daze in a way. And then they marched us into this room where there was this bright light of some kind coming out of a wall. And then the next thing we knew, we were back on the beach.
And you all remember the same thing? It all came out on hypnosis for each one of you?
No, I think it was different.
Yeah, there were some differences. Like one of the things you find with this kind of phenomenon in general, and including our case, is that you don't remember things in exact chronological order. You just remember snippets.
Okay.
And so, you know, we all have these kind of little snippets that we remember. Everything else is shut out, probably, as far as we can shut it. And so that's how we remember everything. It's impossible for us to remember everything in perfect chronological order.
Being in an automobile accident, you being a passenger, what you remember is a hubcap flying by you, where the driver remembers, you know, gripping the wheel and looking at the, you know.
I remember being in the back of the canoe the entire time of witnessing this object come and go. And I remember Jim was in front of me and the lower part of his leg leaving the canoe.
Okay.
And,
Wow.
and that was at the shore of the lake. And I can't remember how he got to the shore of the lake from the middle of where we were fishing.